That 24 hours of Daytona was absolutely incredible. It's not only one of the best Rolex 24s I've ever watched, it's not only one of the best IMSA races I've ever watched, it is one of the best races I've ever watched. I have been watching racing for nearly 15 or 16 years, and I have to say it was one of the best races I have ever seen. And a fan favorite team in Meyer Shank Racing picked up the victory in this year's Rolex 24 at Daytona. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. I just got done watching the Rolex 24 at Daytona. If you hear my voice, I definitely was screaming a lot throughout the event, so I apologize for that. But anyhow, this race was absolutely incredible from start to finish. This was the first time I've ever watched a full 24 hours of Daytona. I've come close in the past years to watching the whole thing, and I do not regret watching this event. And what made this year's event so special is, number one, we had a very, very high car count in this year's Rolex 24 at Daytona. 61 cars showed up for this year's Rolex 24, which because of the new GTD Pro and GTD AM classes, due to the fact that GTLM was gone, they divided GTD Pro and GTD AM. And one thing that was going to do throughout the race was going to create traffic and was also going to create a lot of cautions. There were 17 cautions in this race, and a lot of them were for some stopped cars. I think the 54 car Autosport car stopped at one point in the race. I think the 13 car had electrical issues at the end of the race, bringing the late caution in the event. That ended up happening. And there was a lot of drama throughout the event as well. The 20 car that was driven by Scherer, who was in his first ever start in IMSA, I think his first ever Rolex 24 ever at a young age of 16 or 17. He basically, LMT2, started to drive back. I don't know what the crew chief and the team was doing, what the high point team was doing right there. They should have just stayed there and waited for the officials to come. I don't understand. They brought a full course yellow out right there. But otherwise, such an incredible race throughout. And I think the broadcast did a pretty decent job, in my opinion. There were things that I definitely could improve about the broadcast. First thing, another thing I want to also mention about this race, I do not think full course yellows need to be 35 minutes unless it's very, very severe. I think if a car is stopped on the track, I think it should be much shorter yellows. I know it takes a lot longer to get around the track, but I do think that they need to shorten the yellows up. That being said, though, the action in each of the classes was absolutely incredible. In the Daytona prototype, everybody in the race had a chance to lead at some point. In the early portions, the 48 Action Express Cadillac, the 48 Hendrick Motorsports supported Action Express Cadillac, they actually dominated the early portions of the race when they had Kamui Kobayashi in the car. Kamui was making really, really bonsai moves and dominated early. And then Jose Maria Lopez got in the car, and they got the lead for a little bit. And then I think it was the 01 Chip Ganassi car that ran into the back of them. And then they spun out, basically getting the tires warmed up off of cold tires. And then they fell back out of contention. They were actually starting to get back in contention a little bit with Jimmy Johnson. But then, unfortunately, their race kind of fell apart around 9 to 10 hours into the race due to basically missing the corner. I think they had some contact with somebody. They had to change the wing in the front of the car. That fell, put them in the back. They got involved in an incident later, and then they got a ton of damage 10 to 11 hours in and had to go to the garage and fell out of contention. I think they finished like 11th or 12th overall in the race, so not a terrible race overall, and they're not going for the overall championship, but basically they finished like 23rd, so they really kind of unfortunately fell out of contention in the race and never got a chance to come back. Both Chip Ganassi racing cars also were super, super strong in this race, and I think they were overall the two fastest cars throughout most of the race. But unfortunately, about 10, 15 minutes after Jimmy Johnson's incident, the 01 car started having issues as well. They had to change the alternator belt in the car and also had to change electrical parts as well. And they went, I think, like 40 or 45 laps down. And went from being arguably the favorite cars in the event to basically falling out of contention in this race. Then, of course, you had the 02 car, who was really, really fast. And I thought, actually, the 02 car was going to win the race overall just because how good the 02 Chip Ganassi race car, driven at the time by Kevin Magnussen. In the car, you had Kevin Magnussen. You had other drivers like Alex Lynn, Earl Bamber in the car, and Marcus Ericsson in the car. They were doing really, really good. Unfortunately, they had issues with their fuel pickup, and they had to bring the car to the garage to change that, and they fell really, really far behind. Talking about the 48 car, they had a really, really stout lineup this year. Jimmy Johnson, Kamui Kobayashi, of course, Jose Maria Lopez this year, and also, of course, Mike Rockenfeller, who was back in that car as well. That was really, really impressive to watch in this year's Rolex 24, and they were really, really fast, but unfortunately the issues came up. Every team at some point had problems, whether they got speeding penalties or fell far behind. Basically the 10 car, they had a flat tire. The Acura had a flat tire at one point, but they got back in contention. And then the 60 car, while actually taking the lead of the race, I think from the 5 or the 31 car, they actually had a flat tire as well, and they actually lost a lap or two. But luckily, there was a really, really massive accident that took place, I think, in hour number 4 or 5 due to basically the sunset and being how treacherous it was in the sunset. Basically, there was a 4 or 5 car pack, and they were able to get their last back because they just had pitted, and they were able to get their last back and get right back into contention. They actually end up winning the race overall, by the way. Also, the other car that really contended at the end of the race, Wayne Taylor Racing, like I said, they had to come back through once or twice through adversity in this race. They got off in the grass. That team was a really, really stout lineup this year. They had Philippe Albuquerque, Will Stevens, Alexander Rossi, and of course they had Ricky Taylor in the car as well. All the drivers on that team did really, really well. Basically, like I said, they had a flat tire going into turn number 1, I think of hour 5 or hour number 6, and they basically fell out of contention for a little bit. They eventually got back in contention with the Wayne Taylor Racing Group. Their car was really, really fast, and I knew that once they got back in contention, once they got their last back, you knew that they were going to be overall really, really big contenders. Both of the Action Express cars, well, the 31 Action Express race car this year, there's only 3 people in this year. I think it was Tristan Nunez in the 31 car this year. I think they had Mike Conway and also Pippa Durrani in the car. They actually looked like they were going to run away with this thing at the end of that, but unfortunately, strategy took them back, and they had contact on the last restart of the race. Then finally, the 5 JDC Miller car. Something really cool about this race, Ben Keating was actually in the 5 car this year for this event for the first time racing in the Daytona prototypes. Keating is always known for basically racing in 2 classes in every single year, racing a lot of events. But this year, for the first time, he was competing in overall the top 2 classes. Usually competes in the LMP2 class. I think usually also competes in GTLM or GT Daytona. But he basically competed in the overall class. And that car looked really, really fast, especially when Lloyd Duvall was in the car. And at points when Tristan Vautier was in the car. But unfortunately, at the end of the race, he got pushed off of the grass. And they really, unfortunately, fell out of contention at the end of the event. And then it came down to the end of the race, and like I mentioned, in the regular Daytona prototypes, we would see the Wayne Taylor Racing Group pick up the victory overall. A lot of contact and stuff, crazy at this and stuff, and everyone had adversity through that. In the LMP2s, basically the race was kind of mostly dominated by the PR1 Mathiasen car, the 52. That was Ben Keating's team. Also, I think there was another Mikhail Jensen was also on that team as well. The 81 Dragon Speed car also was really, really fast, and they actually ended up winning the race overall. The A car, the Tower Motorsports car, that team was really, really impressive. I think Delatris was trying to send it in there at the end, and unfortunately he was not able to pass, but very, very lucky for them. Also, a very, very scary incident early in the race for the 18 car of Dwight Merriman. Somehow, this guy still ended up finishing only like 11 laps down after basically crashing into the outside wall early in the race. And unfortunately, like I said, he fell out of contention, but they still ended up finishing in the top 12 in the race. Don't ask me how they did it, because that was absolutely impressive and absolutely incredible. Among other things, we also had LMP3. Basically, there are only 2 cars that were really in contention in this race. Core Autosport was basically in contention in this event, and also the 74 Riley Motorsports car would end up winning the race overall. So congratulations to the Riley Motorsports team on winning that. And GTD Pro, I believe it would be the 9 FAF car, the one when Philippe Nasser was driving that 9 car. Mattia Jaminet and also Matt Campbell were in that car as well. Basically came down to a last lap battle. Most of the race, it was like the 14 car for Vassar Solomon was up there at points. James Colato, the Risi Cambazzanoni car, was up there a lot, but unfortunately they had issues late in the race and fell out of contention. And then it came down to the 9 FAF Porsche, and then the 2 KCMG car that was not competing for the championship, while the FAF Motorsports team was competing for the overall championship, I believe. And it would come down to them. The 2 car basically tried to send it in there at the end of the race, and unfortunately they fell out of contention in this event. Well, they basically fell out of chance to win the race, but I think they still ended up finishing on the podium in this race. And then at GT Daytona, pretty much it was really all free-for-all in the event. You really did not know who was going to win. One of the early favorites in the race, the Vassar Sullivan car, the 12 car, Frankie Montevecchio was driving that early in the race, and unfortunately what ended up happening, Frankie Montecalvo was a 47, I think it was a Ferrari, unfortunately spun up, and unfortunately with the anti-lock brake system they had, unfortunately backed it up in a Townsend Bell's car, which was really, really unfortunate, because that car I think could have had an overall shot to win. I believe it was the 62, I don't remember who won the race overall in GTD. I know the Winward Racing, they went behind the wall. A lot of teams basically went behind the wall, and there were a lot of cautions in this event. The Andretti Autosport team was also competing in the LMP3 class throughout this year, but unfortunately they fell overall. And now let's talk about overall, what about the team, the Meyer Shank team. Holy crap, that was absolutely incredible. 4 great drivers on that team this year. Simon Pagenaud and Julio Castroneves. Of course, one of my favorite drivers, Julio Castroneves. We know Julio Castroneves is one of the greatest race car drivers to ever live in this world. That was really, really great to watch from him. But seeing Tom Bloomquist, never heard of this guy before. He gets into this car for the first time. He actually was supposed to compete in the 2019 24 Hours of Daytona, but unfortunately, he had basically never got an opportunity to compete in that due to basically his visa getting denied. But his team ended up winning anyways. Then he gets an opportunity to race in the 60 car, and they actually were asking him if he wanted to finish the race, but Tom Blumko said no, let Julio finish the race, and Julio ended up winning it. I've been a big fan of Meyer Shank Racing, and now they've not only been the last half year or so, they've won now back-to-back Rolex 24s at basically, Cashin Evans has won back-to-back Rolex 24s. He's also won the Indy 500 in the same year. First time that anyone has basically won the Rolex 24 at Indy 500 same year. It's never happened. And I think that he is looking for his 5th ever Rolex 24 win ever. And just such an incredible race. And seeing Julio win, basically climbing the fence, that was something incredible and something absolutely inspirational to watch. For me, overall, like I mentioned in the beginning of this episode, this is one of the best races I've ever seen in my entire lifetime. There's so much that I'm probably forgetting to talk about because there was so much that happened. There were so many spins that happened throughout this race. You had prototype spinning. You had contact between a 5 and a 31 at one point in the race. I think after the pit stops, you had the 6 car get a speeding penalty at one point. You had wing changes for the 5 team at one point. You had basically a lot of issues throughout the event. You had, like I said, speeding penalties throughout. You had cars spinning off the grass and stuff. Fuel pump issues, among other things that happened that made this race absolutely incredible to watch and so many crazy results. But absolutely incredible, absolutely fun race. And I cannot wait to see the NASCAR season in general when that kicks off here this week because NASCAR season kicks off. Can I ask one thing? Can we have a 24-hour NASCAR race? I think that would be fun and absolutely incredible. But let me say this also. Like I said, if you want to hear my score of this race, I am going to give this year's Rolex 24 at Daytona a perfect score, 10 out of 10. From start to finish, this race was absolutely incredible. I know there were a lot of caution in this race. I think there were, 17 or 18 full course yellows, which I think is basically 50% more than what happened in 2021. I think we had 12 in 2021, including like 805 or 810 laps. I think we got 750 or 760 laps. And like I mentioned this race as well, you really never knew who really was going to win. Everyone in DPI had a chance to basically lead at one point. I think it was the 60 car, Meyer Shank car, or the 5 car that led the most laps in this event. And I think that the 6 team absolutely clearly deserves. They were doing really good strategy as well. What I noticed throughout the race, especially with the 60 car as well, they were playing really, really good pit strategy and fuel strategy in the race as well. So I thought it was such an incredible race, really, really fun. And the racing season is just getting started. And we've got a lot of coverage. We'll be covering a lot of motorsports events, including Formula One, maybe do some IndyCar reviews and NASCAR reviews as well. So anyway, that is today's race review from the Rolex 24 at Daytona. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram and support me on Patreon as well. Let's go over that and comment your thoughts on today's video. What are your thoughts about this race as a whole? Let me know in the comments below. Let me know your score in the comments below. And congratulate Wayne Taylor Racing on picking up the victory. P.S. I think NBC, like I said, did a decent job. Dale Jr. was really, really fun to watch. Also, Vanessa Richardson, shout out to her. I think she did a really, really good job. Another thing to note, I have reached 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, and I plan to talk about that and thanking you guys for that. I've got that special going to be on the way some point this week, so check that out. But anyway, like I said, we're 1 week away from the NASCAR season. I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great and awesome NASCAR and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.